Hey, we are live with another episode of Hump Day Wednesday on FUD Yourself. JD Gagnon here. We have a new guest today, Mr. Tokenizer. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about everything we've got today.
Amazing. Yeah, super keen to have you, a fellow Canadian. I do have to ask, though, just for the people that aren't familiar with you, why Tokenizer and what is it that you do?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start off with my name, Tokenizer. I initially wanted the name Tokenizer, but as you know, that's probably a pretty common word in this space. So obviously it was taken. And so my next best option was, do I want to replace the Z with a C or S? And I guess I took the word nice because I was like, you know what, maybe people will think I'm a nice guy and I'll gain some traction that way. And so, yeah, that's kind of how my name came about. As
That's
for what
cool.
I do, I provide blockchain research on fundamental analysis on a variety of different projects. So I think we're somewhere up to like 15 or 16 projects now. And so we turn that research into content on various content platforms. So like Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, LinkedIn, etc. You guys can find the rest of that in my links, which I'm sure you guys can find just on my page through Twitter or on my YouTube. But yeah, I'm also the chief marketing officer for ChainStats, which is a data analytics company. And we're basically trying to bring on-chain data for industry purposes. So like we hear about on-chain data all the time, but it's largely been used for like trading and market analysis. We want to open that up for actual like industry tools. So think like finance or supply chains.
Amazing. Cool, man. Yeah, we'll ask our producers to put a link under the video so that people can a link to just your link tree or to your YouTube or whatever.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
So people can find you. Obviously, super excited to have you here. Obviously, your research is incredible. We've read a good amount of it, so it's excited to have you here. Today, we're talking about a bunch of shit, really. The first thing is we're going to talk a little bit about Grayscale and their court win. If anybody watched the markets go straight up yesterday for a minute, that was why. We're going to talk a little bit about that and what that means. Their legal battle against the SEC. So we're gonna talk about that. We're going to talk about how that might impact the Bitcoin ETF applications, which is relatively interesting. So there's a lot of speculation around that. We're going to talk a little bit more about my favorite dude, Sam Bankman-Fried. He's not my favorite dude. We often say FU on FU Friday. Every Friday we have an episode called FU Friday, and our FU often is Gary Gensler and SBF. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We talked a bit about his bail being revoked and some of that stuff a few episodes ago. We'll talk a little bit about this. We briefly touched on the crypto license for US users for X, or formerly Twitter. We're going to talk a little bit more about that today because some more information has come out. Yesterday, it was like super fresh. We didn't even have a Chiron or anything for it because it had just been announced. And we're going to talk a little bit about some pivots over to Asia. Quick reminder to everybody, it's a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter Spaces, Twitter Live Video. We are on Spotify, RSS, pretty much anywhere. Anywhere that you can get a podcast, you can get FUD Yourself. So like, share, subscribe, help us out. We don't take any advertiser money. We don't take any cash from anybody to say anything. It's really just a value add for the community to help people navigate the space. Okay, one final thing. Shout out to Gnosis and Safe. Super critical technology for everything we do in terms of using their multi-sig infrastructure on many networks. Really cool merch. So there's a vault on the back. It's kind of cool. Anyways, really cool merch. Shout out to Gnosis. Anybody else that wants a shout out? Size medium, send me some merch. Happy days. Without further ado, let's freaking go. Damn it, I forgot to change my speakers. One sec. There we go. Okay, let's freaking go. All right, are back, and we are cooking with fire today. We first are going to talk a little bit about Grayscale. So essentially, what happened was they had a win against the SEC. So there was essentially, oops. Oh, give me 1 second. My stats are on the wrong page here, so apologies. It is a live show, if you were wondering, and we do sometimes have a couple mistakes. Anyways, so what happened essentially is Grayscale. Well, originally the SEC rejected Grayscale's ETF application, and then in response to that, Grayscale sued, citing that there was like impossible inconsistencies to try to follow in how things are getting approved and why it wasn't approved. There's zero consistency, and they won. The SEC essentially has yet again another challenge against their strict regulatory approach to this, and so we'll have to wait and see kind of what comes of this. Bitcoin was up 6%, Coinbase shares up 14%, Ether up 5% on the news yesterday, almost instantly if you look at the charts. What do you think about this one, my friend? This is kind of cool. We've been talking about, Bitcoin ETFs for, it feels like damn near a decade at this point. What are your thoughts? What does this make you think?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first thing this makes me think is just, especially paired with the news we've seen from Ripple just a month ago now, when they had got that partial win of their own lawsuit, and now we're seeing Grayscale winning their end of the lawsuit against the SEC. I think the one thing we're seeing is like the SEC is just not looking good right now. Like, I think when you're an entity like that, people expect you to have that kind of a, like, I don't want to say dominance, but like some control over the market for like the actual better and growth of this industry. But from what we've seen over the past year, as you said, like the SEC has been very backwards in holding the industry back as a whole. And I think, like, if we go back to the fact that we're both Canadians, we actually have Canadian Bitcoin ETFs here. And I know in other countries, like in Brazil, they've got Bitcoin ETFs. And these aren't futures ETFs like we've seen with what's happened in the States, but these are spot exchange ETFs. And so I really think, like, it's the US has got to do something at this point, or like they're going to keep falling behind. And they already are, compared to nations like, when we look at like Hong Kong, UK, Dubai, they're all very forward pushing with this industry.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I mean, we talk a lot about, we call it the crypto arms race. And so that's kind of a theme of our Thursday shows, is the crypto arms race. It's Kiara's favorite. But yeah, like, MiCA in the EU has been fairly forward looking and meaningfully adopted already. In Canada, everything became IROC regulated, which is the Investment Industry Regulatory Organization of Canada, and the Ontario Securities Commission, and that went quite well. But here we are, and I was having this conversation this morning. I'm in the US, obviously now. I'm Canadian, but I'm in the US, and we literally can't legally participate in pretty much anything in crypto anymore. I mean, no one wants us to hold their assets or their tokens for obvious reasons. We can't invest in things for obvious reasons. And very soon, we're going to be permissioned out of using protocols for obvious reasons. And that's largely problematic. I think I've been a big critic of the SEC and how they've approached this regulation through enforcement, with very opaque rules at best. And luckily, we've seen a couple of resounding wins, pushing back slightly against the SEC and their current MO. What I think this does, is it going to stop the SEC from claiming and thinking that everything is a security? Probably not. But what it will do, I think, is hopefully encourage Congress in the US to do a damn thing and get a bill passed, so that we do have some clarity and that we do have some rules and structures. We're not going to like them. Nobody in the space is going to like whatever regulation comes down. We're all going to dislike it, but it has to happen. In my opinion, it has to happen. There's no meaningful scale without regulation. Okay, so they win the legal battle. What do you think this means then for their ETF? So they've applied for, I think, 4 or 5 times now. Grayscale's one of the groups that's applied and been rejected, been rejected, and kept doing this. ARK Invest, Kathy Wood and group is also another one that's really trying to get the ETF, spot ETF going. And then, of course, BlackRock. What do you think, Iser, that this means for the approval? Do you think that the SEC is going to be have their tail between their legs and be a little bit more willing now to approve this, or do you think it's just going to be more legal back and forth?
Well, I think realistically, the main reason behind why it hasn't been approved hasn't been actually due to legal reasons. Like we all know about Gary Gensler's background in Goldman and just the whole banking thing. And so I personally do really think there is some ulterior motive behind this for them to slow down the adoption in the States. And maybe adoption isn't the right word, but like market access of this.
Losing a little bit on stream, on the video stream. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There we go. I think your internet just kicked out for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Where did I last cut off at?
At the very beginning of your response, pretty much.
Oh, okay. I was just saying, we know about Gary's background, and I genuinely believe there is some ulterior motive beyond just, it's not regulated. Because if it's not regulated, why are multiple countries also opening up spot Bitcoin ETFs? And it's not even just Bitcoin at this point now, but we have an Ethereum ETF here in Canada, and I think we have other altcoins on the way. So it's really making you think, supposedly the strongest country in the world is trying to sit out of this global market of, it's a globally liquid market, and it's 24/7. And it really makes you think, why would such a financial powerhouse sit out on these innovations?
Yeah, it is kind of mind blowing, to be honest. We talk about this quite a bit. I think, what's really been promising, it was not that long ago that a Bitcoin futures ETF was made available. The first one was approved in the US. And now with groups like Fidelity and BlackRock and others also applying for these ETFs, I think the pressure is, in my opinion, starting to mount. We spend a lot of time on lobby and in the Beltline and so on, talking to policymakers and legislators, trying to figure out what the heck the future is going to look like. And I think there's a growing positive momentum here that everybody's starting to realize, hey, listen, this asset class isn't going anywhere. And we are losing quickly market share in the US to foreign markets. We're going to talk a little bit about a flight to Asia later in the show today, which is kind of interesting, I think, and makes sense, obviously, given the current climate. I'm a big fan of ETFs. I think it's one of the best ways to give more mass adoption to some of these blue chip assets. So we'll have to see. I think the U.S. Court of Appeals, based on their wording, and I didn't read the actual ruling very, very close, but essentially what it says is essentially the appeals rebukes the SEC's logic for rejecting a Bitcoin ETF application, calling it capricious and arbitrary, which is kind of what we've all been saying so far, is that not only are we unclear what the rules are, but we're even if the SEC claims that there's certain rules that should apply to us, they can't tell us what we have to do to come into compliance. And that's been Coinbase's argument also. And so essentially, I think that the way that the language played out, I'm not sure if it forces the SEC to reconsider, but what I do think it does is encourage the SEC that they're not going to be able to sue people. They're not going to be able to enforce a lot of this stuff, because now this has become a meaningful defense. Is that cool? But you wouldn't give us the information to be compliant. So what the hell are we supposed to do? Any final thoughts on that one before we move on slightly?
No, I'm just all in agreement for that. I think there's a lot of cleaning up that has to be done in the States for proper blockchain adoption to start. And Honestly, I think I don't want to say it starts with the SEC. I think best case scenario, we find a different not a standard setting body, but a regulating body for the future of digital assets. Because I don't think you can apply the laws of securities or even commodities into an asset class where it's like 120 years after those bills were drafted.
Yeah, it's about damn time. I think we just need to pitter patter and get on with it. We're going to move a little bit away from grayscale ETFs, but we're going to stay on the SEC and some court filings. What we were able to get information on yesterday is, in fact, that there's some interesting court filings that are sealed that have been submitted by the SEC against Binance. And so there's been a lot of speculation over the last 24 to 48 hours on what the hell this means. It's not super common unless they're building a really big case to have these sealed court motions like this. It included, I think, 35 exhibits and a whole bunch of other information. So it's weird because the secretive nature, and if you combine that with kind of the other challenges that Binance has been having with the SEC and with other jurisdictions globally, it's really starting to get the conspiracy theories, so to speak, or speculatory ideas really flowing around here. It's very strange. It's somewhat unprecedented, and we just really don't know what the future looks like for Binance. I've talked a lot about Binance on the show, but I'd love to hear, from an analyst's perspective, kind of what are your thoughts? Do you think Binance is as exposed as this implies?
Well, I think Binance has kind of been in talks of regulators for quite some time now. Like I want to say well over 2 or 3 years now, and they are the most popular crypto exchange out there by a long shot. And regardless if you're a fan of Binance or not, you have to admit a lot of the stuff they've been doing over the past few years has been shady, to say the least, I think.
Yeah.
And I think whether you're a fan of Binance or not, you have to kind of admit that. And I was personally a big fan of Binance for a while, but I totally saw all these regulatory issues coming because of how they were operating. And I honestly don't think they're gonna slow down or stop anytime soon until there is some resolution. And it's not just the US going after Binance, right? There's been other jurisdictions we've seen doing very similar things.
Yeah.
And I think my biggest question is, I think it's a matter of when and not if Binance gets slapped. How bad will it be? And is it something they can recover from? Because obviously Binance is a large infrastructural player in this space, or for the moment they are in this space. I don't know if they will be in the future, but it does bring a lot of questions. Can Binance survive a regulatory clear out like that?
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking a lot about, at least I have, about how puzzling it seems to me. Some of the actions and movements of Binance of late have been very hard to wrap my head around. They pulled out of Canada when it became securities. You can't access Binance in Canada. They've essentially pulled out of the US. You can't do much on Binance US anymore. It kind of exists, but no one really does anything. They pulled out of Germany. They were asked, or they were denied licenses in the UK. And then they're going into small little countries like Ethiopia, I think was one of them, and a few others that we talked about. And from a business strategy perspective, that seems super strange to me. Couple that with, we've been talking about this for years, but we all know that there's some pretty shady material that goes on, or pretty shady actions that happen inside of Binance, especially with their perps and leverage and broadcasting limits and stops and to certain people. That was something FTX was doing internally, and that was a big cause for concern. And it's to most people that have been paying attention for the last 5 to 7 years, it seems like that's the case. You see these weird liquidation spikes where, anyways, there's a lot of speculation around that. But also, there's a lot of speculation around the actual, who owns Binance. There's been very, very little information ever provided to anybody who's on the original cap table, who the actual decision makers are, who's on the board. a lot of that stuff is actually not publicly available, which is also super strange. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Given the amount of volume that Binance runs, and the amount of users globally, I find it hard to believe that they're just going to go away. But it could be a pretty big blow if all of a sudden one of the largest group in the world from a centralized exchange perspective has to completely pivot their business model. It might be interesting to see what happens. But anyways, any final thoughts on that one, Big Guy, before we move on?
No, not really. I think again, just in agreement of everything you're saying about Binance, how they've been very shady. Well, I think shady might be a bit of an understatement at this point, but I guess one thing I would want to point out, and it kind of ties into everything Binance has done. I wish I had a thread pulled up to kind of discuss more on this, but
yeah.
Essentially, so the on-chain data company I'm working for, ChainStats, a while back when we saw that big pump of Bitcoin, where it went from like 26K to 30K, I believe, we had tracked the data of what was pumping that, like what was causing that specific pump, and we realized that was all coming from Binance through BUSD. Like it wasn't USDT or USDC pumping it, but it was purely BUSD, which is of course a stablecoin that has connections to Binance and Paxos. So it really makes you wonder, like, what really is going on. And then that was the same time where it came out that BUSD wasn't backed 1-to-1, right? So it made sense how they were pumping it into Bitcoin and then selling it for USDT.
Yeah, there's some, again, like what's puzzling about this is there's been so much speculation over as long as I've been in the space. I mean, from 2016 on, there's been constant speculation around Binance, it feels like, but we've never really had any meaningful answers. Like I don't think we've ever actually had answers. It's been a lot of like anecdotes and
for sure. But I think at the same time, like I'll take USDT as an example. Lots of speculation around that, right? And
yeah.
I think you don't really see these speculations unfold until it's too late. Like we can take Celsius or Luna or something else, BlockFi as an example, right? Like everything looks like it's working great until it's not.
Yeah, all of a sudden the dirty laundry is aired and you're like, whoa. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, in hindsight, everything is clear, right? Like we look at the FTX thing, and I was shitting on BitBoy yesterday on the show a little bit because he got let go from Ben Armstrong.
I saw that, yeah.
BitBoy Crypto, which is strange. But to his credit, right before the FTX thing was going down, he was like, sounding the alarms, waving the flags, like trying to tell anybody who would listen that Sam was in deep shit, and he somehow was on, had good authority to believe that to be true. And everybody thought he was crazy, and he probably didn't go about it the right way because he kind of seemed a little crazy. But again, you hear these warning signs and you hear people kind of blow the whistle, so to speak, and often we don't take it seriously until after the fact. We're like, oh shit.
No, for sure. Yeah. Like myself personally, I never trusted Sam Bankman-Fried just because I was always taught if they sound like a narc, they probably are a narc.
Probably are.
That's kind of what I thought of Sam Bankman-Fried this whole time. So personally, I never touched FTX, but no, I completely agree with those points. Like I was using Celsius for a little bit, and everything seemed great until the last day you could withdraw tokens, and then right after that, it was just like boom. And
just kidding, like, we're actually insolvent.
Yeah, exactly. And the question is like whether that happens to Binance, right? And honestly, I don't know how I can answer that, but I don't think I can give you guys a concrete answer. But my personal opinion is no. I think Binance is a bit too big at this point to just completely fold and fail.
Yeah.
There need to be more than just regulatory issues for Binance to fall. Like I think they need to fail as a business financially for them to actually start seeing like a lot of pain. I think, if they do get hit with regulations, they pay some fines, they remodel their business maybe a little bit, apply for some more licenses, and boom. Once the regulators get their fees, they're fine. And as long as you're compliant, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on that one. I like the positive spin on it, that I don't like anything that's too big to fail, but in this particular circumstance, it would be so catastrophic for the space, especially right now, if Binance in fact did implode. And I'm with you. I don't think it's necessarily going to happen. Speaking of
I actually, okay, yeah. If you want to move on, I just had a quick question just for a little thinking. I'm curious on your thoughts. What do you think would be more consequential for the industry, to see Coinbase fall or to see Binance fall? Because I personally think it's Coinbase.
Oh, without a doubt. I think it would be more consequential only because Coinbase by far is the most compliant leaning entity in crypto.
100%, yeah.
In terms of scale, I met with Brian a few months ago, just learning a little bit about Base before Base was Base.
Nice.
And a few other things. It wasn't just me, by the way. It was a presentation. So
okay.
I don't want to mislead anybody thinking I have a personal relationship with Brian. But anyways, it was pretty interesting. The amount of licenses that they already own, but they just aren't using, is kind of incredible. Like when regulation comes out, Coinbase is going to be and they've said this for the last 3, 4, 5 years at least. They want guidance on how to be compliant. They want guidance on how to come within the realm of regulation, but they're just not getting it. And for that reason, I think that would be catastrophic for the space if they were somehow shut down. But they have, in very certain terms, suggested that if the U.S. isn't going to play ball, they're open to moving, and that would be maybe not catastrophic for crypto, but it'd be a massive blow to the U.S.
For sure, yeah. And
many ways,
personally, I really I've heard Coinbase saying that, and them saying they've looked to relocating in the UK just due to the regulatory unclarity in the States. And I give major props to companies doing that, because if your nation isn't giving you the proper guidance and infrastructure to actually build your solutions out, your next best move is not to abandon, the vision you had, but to move somewhere else and fulfill that elsewhere. Because there is going to be, if the US doesn't decide to, clean up the Regulations Act, just about every other country in the world will be more than happy to swallow up the innovations that's happening there.
No shit. Who wouldn't want Coinbase in terms of just revenue and employment opportunities, and it really adds a lot. Taxes, yeah. Taxes. Anyways, I think we could probably do a whole episode on Coinbase, Binance, and centralized exchanges.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Maybe we'll
have to come back to that.
I was just going to say, maybe we'll have you back and have an episode on that. I just wanted to talk a little bit about SBF briefly. I know we said we were going to talk about Asia and Twitter, but we're bumping up on time, so we'll have to push that over to tomorrow. But there's a few things. We talked a little bit about how SBF had his bail revoked, which is sad in a sense, because I don't think he believed that it would happen. That he kind of felt like, and has been acting this way for years, that he's almost above the law, so to speak. And even when the hammer was coming down, it seemed like he was still trying to, what they claim was, influence witnesses and so on and so forth. Specifically, the journal of Ellison, that he was starting to publish stuff to try to intimidate her and all this other bullshit. Anyways, now prosecutors are having a fairly big challenge right now, because essentially SBF wants to bar millions of pages of documents into evidence. And I'm not 100% clear why that is. But he essentially the prosecutors are saying, listen, you're only now locked up in a sense that you couldn't have found these documents, but you had months and months knowing that we requested them and needed them. And you still haven't provided them. So I think that's kind of where they're going on this. The DOJ essentially is alleging right now that Bankman-Fried mislabeled documents to shield the evidence. This is going to be quite the court case, I think, because there's so much weird shit going on. There's claims of, obviously fraud and intimidation, and there's witnesses that are flipping to be state witnesses and all this crazy stuff. It's almost like, I don't know, they're going to have to make a movie out of this damn thing. How do you feel, just, in closing today, how do you feel about SBF? Do you think he's getting what he deserves? Do you think it should be a good signal for the space, or how do you view this?
Yeah, for sure. Like personally, ever since he got caught in the Bahamas, I've been very on and off with the news about SBF, just because like a lot of what I'm focused on is like the business and like actual like technology and network side of things. So I don't look too much at, what happens after the news headline. But I've been keeping up with Sam Bankman-Fried here and there. And as I was saying earlier, I thought he was a narc from day one. Still kind of believe that, but like one question that I really think just like over time is like who really is this guy? Because like initially everyone thought he was this what's that term he used, altruistic maximalism,
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But so everyone thought he was just like a really good guy who
just wanted to give all his
to
money
make the
away.
world a better place and just enjoyed playing League of Legends on the side. Like that's what most people thought of Sam at first. And then this comes out. It's like a complete different story. And you can kind of understand why he put that facade on to kind of like, make him seem like the poster child for crypto. And like, obviously that's backfired tenfold since then. And like, I don't know. I'm just really thinking like, what really are his true intentions? And, like what's going on behind the scenes with all that? Because I'm sure you've covered this before, but their parents have very close connections to MIT and Stanford, which, as we know, Gary Gensler is from MIT and Stanford. And it also makes you think, because like, if the SEC is so good at going after all these other, I don't even want to say companies, but they went after tons of smaller scams. So like, if we look at Ethereum Max, they were suing, I think around the same time Kim Kardashian got sued, Sam Bankman-Fried was like exposed for all that. And it makes you think like, what's the bigger case to be going after? Kim Kardashian promoting Ethereum Max, or Sam Bankman-Fried scamming people out of billions of
dollars? Yeah, like it's obnoxious. We're gonna say it's not FU Friday today, but I'm gonna say an honorary FU to Sam Bankman-Fried yet again. Give me my damn money back. We had a bunch of market making assets on FTX, so obviously we're waiting for the bankruptcy to complete itself. Well, my friend, we're bumping up against the end of the show. I super appreciate having you on. Everybody on Twitter Spaces, thank you for attending live. Super exciting to see y'all here supporting us and Tokenizer. Quick reminder, we're a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We talk all things crypto news, generally speaking from a macro global perspective. We don't do any like individual protocol assessments or any of that stuff yet, but we might do that at some point. If you can help us out, like, share, subscribe, and bookmark us on Twitter, please, or X, as it's called now. That really helps us with reach. We don't commercialize this show. We don't take any payments from anybody. It's really just a service to the community as best we can. I love it. We've got to be pushing up on 175 episodes already. So we're going strong and we're not stopping anytime soon. So really appreciate that. And with that, I say to you, my friend, go FUD yourself. Have a great day.
Peace.